This happened last summer when I was house sitting for my aunt and uncle in northern Michigan. They live near a small lake called Crystal Point, about 25 minutes from any town. Think pine trees, long empty roads, no neighbors for at least a quarter-mile in any direction. It's peaceful, beautiful, really. But it also gets too quiet at night, like the kind of quiet where your ears start ringing. I was 28 at the time, just out of a breakup, and figured 2 weeks alone in a cozy lake house would be good for my mental health. I even brought my dog, a 3-year-old golden retriever named Olive. She's friendly, happy, never barks unless something's really off. The house itself is kind of modern cabin style. Big stone fireplace, wooden beams, and this giant open living room with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the woods and lake. No blinds, no curtains, just open glass walls. The first few nights, it didn't bother me. I even liked it waking up to natural sunlight and seeing deer pass by while I made coffee. But something about those windows at night, it's hard to explain. When it's dark, the inside lights reflect off the glass so perfectly that it feels like you re-looking into a mirror. You can't see out. But if someone were outside, standing there quietly, watching, you'd never know. The weirdness started on night 4. I was on the couch with Olive at my feet, watching some low-effort crime doc on Netflix. The house was dim, just the lamp beside the sofa and the flicker from the TV. Olive suddenly stood up, ears alert, and growled. A deep one. That dog never growls. She was facing the windows. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. Just trees swaying gently. Moonlight through branches. Probably a raccoon, I whispered, reaching down to pet her. That's when I heard it. A sound so faint I wasn't even sure it was real at first. Whispering, coming from the window. I froze. The sound wasn't in the room. It was through the glass. A soft, breathy voice like someone talking just under their breath. I couldn't make out words. It just kept going, low and steady. I crept toward the window. My heart was pounding, my hands tingling. I don't know what I expected to see. Maybe a drunk fisherman who wandered too far from a cabin. A prank? But when I looked outside, nothing. No movement, no shapes, no animals. The whispering stopped the moment I stepped up to the glass. Gone. Just like that. I turned all the outside lights on and left them that way. That night, I went to bed later than usual. Olive curled up next to the bed, still a little on edge. I left the bedroom door open just in case. Sometime around 2:30 a.m., I woke up suddenly. I don't know why, just a heavy feeling, like something was pressing against the house. And then I swear to you, I heard it again. A whisper, right outside the bedroom window. Not angry, not urgent, just there, speaking to the glass. I sat up in bed, frozen. Didn't move. Didn't want to move. Then it changed. I heard something else. Not a whisper. Not even words. Just a long, slow inhale. Like someone was breathing in deeply, right against the window. I couldn't take it anymore. I jumped out of bed and yanked the curtain open. Nothing. The woods. The moonlight. Same as always. But this time, Olive was whimpering. Not barking. Not growling. Just low, terrified whimpers. That scared me more than anything. I stayed awake until sunrise, clutching a flashlight and a kitchen knife like some horror movie cliché. And when daylight finally broke, I checked every inch of that house. Everything seemed fine, except for one thing. On the outside of the window, where I'd heard the breathing, were these long, streaky smudges, like someone had dragged their fingers slowly down the glass. 5 wide marks, roughly human hand-shaped, but too long, and high like 7 feet up. I washed the glass, told myself it had to be condensation or pollen or something harmless. But later that morning, my uncle called to check in. We chatted a bit, then he asked, "Everything okay? You settling in fine?" I hesitated. "Yeah, mostly. I did hear something weird last night, though." He went quiet, then said, very softly, "You heard it whisper, didn't you?" "So yeah," my uncle asked, "you heard it whisper, didn't you?" I paused, then said, "Yeah, I think I did. You've heard it too?" He didn't answer right away, just let out a long breath and said, "I was hoping it wouldn't happen while we were gone." He told me quietly, almost reluctantly, that they'd had strange things happen in that house for years. It always centered around the windows, especially the big ones in the living room. My aunt had told him she heard her name called on more than one occasion, and when she looked, she'd swear someone was outside, but there was never any proof. They eventually installed cameras out front. Nothing ever showed up. That should have made me feel better. It didn't, because now I wasn't just dealing with one weird whisper. I was dealing with something that had a pattern. That night, I closed the curtains in the bedroom and left the hallway light on. I even slept with a podcast playing in one ear to try and drown out the silence. Didn't work. I woke up again, same time. 2:30 a.m. This time, there was no whispering. Just breathing. Louder. Closer. Like someone standing directly outside the curtain, sucking in air like they were trying to breathe me in. I didn't open the curtain this time. I just stared at it. The fabric moved slightly. Not enough to call it wind. Just a little twitch, like something passed too close to it. And then came 3 knocks. Right on the glass. Not fists, not sharp. Just soft knuckles. Knock, knock, then silence. I couldn't even bring myself to turn on the light. The next morning, I found footprints in the dirt outside the window. But they weren't shaped like shoes. They were barefoot and huge. Like a man's foot, except the toes were longer than they should have been, and spread wider, almost like fingers. There were only 3 prints, one facing the window, one angled toward the house, and one leading away, disappearing into the woods. I called my uncle again. I wanted answers. This time, I demanded them. He hesitated, then said, "There was a man who lived on that land before the house was built. Early 1900s. Lived alone. Locals said he went crazy after his wife disappeared. Some say he wandered the woods at night, looking for her, calling her name. Other stories say he heard things in the trees whispering to him. He built a little shack near the lake long gone now. But after he died, people claimed to hear his voice outside their windows. I asked him if he thought it was his ghost. He said, 'I don't think it's him. I think something found him out there. And now it's here.' That night was the worst one. I went to bed with every window covered, every light on. Olive slept in the bed with me, her head on my chest. We were both exhausted, on edge, worn out. Around 2:30 a.m., she jolted upright and started growling. Not a bark, just a deep, steady growl. I whispered, "It's okay, girl. I got you." But then the power cut. Every light, the clock, the fan, gone. And from the living room, I heard it. Whispering, rapid, rambling, but clearer than ever. And in the middle of it, I heard my name, Donnie, followed by another name, "Help me." It sounded like a woman's voice, faint, panicked, distant, but inside the house. I stayed frozen. Then, without warning, the hallway light flickered on, just for a second. And I saw it, a tall, pale figure standing in the hallway, facing the living room windows, its head tilted, its arms long and motionless. And it was looking into the window like it was waiting for something to look back. The lights went out again. When they came back a few seconds later, it was gone. The next day, I packed everything. I didn't wait for my aunt and uncle to get home. I left them a note, told them I couldn't stay, not another night. They didn't blame me. It's been nearly a year since that happened. I've never gone back to that house. I don't answer calls from unknown numbers late at night. I don't even sleep with the blinds open anymore. And sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, no matter where I am, I still feel like something's outside the window. Not knocking, not whispering, just watching. When I was 22 and finally living on my own for the first time, I had just rented this little one-bedroom house outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was nothing fancy, just old, creaky, and tucked into a street most people forget exists. I found the place through one of those sketchy rental sites where the landlord meets you in a parking lot with keys and barely asks for ID. Rent was stupid cheap, and I was broke, so I took it. I didn't ask questions. The house was about 60 years old, surrounded by thick woods in the back, and one neighbor whose house looked abandoned half the time. There were chain-link fences on both sides, but out back, just trees. I actually liked the isolation at first. I had space to think, play guitar without annoying anyone, stay up late watching TV with nobody complaining. No roommate drama, no parents. The first 2 weeks were fine. I mean, there were weird creaks and groans from the walls at night. But that's old house stuff, right? That changed one Thursday night. It was the first time I felt like I wasn't alone there. I'd stayed up watching something dumb on Netflix and dating show where people pretend to be rich. I was half asleep on the couch, still in my work clothes. I remember the time, 12:45 a.m. I just checked it because I thought, all right, I should probably go to bed now. Then came the knock. Not on the front door, not on a window, on the back door, the one that faced the woods. It was just 2 knocks, slow and weirdly soft. Knock, knock. Not urgent, not loud, just deliberate. I sat up fast, heart immediately pounding. My first thought was, did I lock the back door? I got up quietly and made my way to the kitchen. The back door had one of those little half curtains over the window, so I couldn't see out unless I moved it. I stood there for a few seconds, holding my breath, trying to hear anything else. Nothing. I figured maybe it was a raccoon. They're bold out here. Or maybe some dumb neighborhood kid messing around. I peeked through the curtain. Nobody. The porch light was off, but the moon was bright enough to make out the deck. Nothing moved. I waited a bit longer. No sound, no motion, no one walking away. I exhaled slowly, chalked it up to my imagination, or maybe a tree branch tapping somewhere. But before I could turn around, knock. Again, the exact same knock. I whipped the curtain back open, still nothing. Porch was empty. This time, I checked the lock. It was secure. I stood there for another full minute, just staring at the doorknob like it was about to turn on its own. I felt ridiculous. Eventually, I went back to the couch. I tried turning the TV back on to distract myself, but the mood had shifted. You ever feel like the air just gets heavy? Like something's watching you from behind your back, but you're too scared to turn around? That's how it felt. I kept glancing toward the kitchen, half expecting to see a face in the window. Of course I didn't. At some point, I dozed off with the volume low, blanket over me, and the lights still on. I wish that had been the end of it. But about 45 minutes later, I woke up to knocking again. This time, it was at the front door. I sat bolt upright. My heart felt like it stopped. The front door has no curtain, just a peephole, and it's directly across from the living room. I didn't get up right away. The knock came again, 2 slow, steady knocks, just like before. Knock, knock. I whispered to myself, what the hell is going on? I grabbed the baseball bat I kept near the couch, not because I was brave, But because my hands were shaking too bad to hold anything else, I crept toward the front door, staying low, listening for footsteps. Nothing, just silence. I stood to the side of the door and looked through the peephole. Empty porch. No one there. No shadow. No motion. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. I backed away and sat back down on the couch, this time facing the door, back in my lap. That's when I noticed something else. The digital clock on my cable box had frozen. 1:41 the seconds weren't ticking. I pulled out my phone. It said 1:41 too. No Wi-Fi. No signal. That had never happened before. And then from the kitchen, I heard something creak. I turned. And I swear to you, the back door knob was slowly turning. The back door knob was slowly turning, not jiggling. Not like someone trying to break in. Just turning. Smooth, careful. Like whoever was out there didn't want to get in yet. They just wanted me to know they could. I stared at it from across the room, frozen. My breathing got shallow. I don't even think I blinked. Then it stopped. No sound, no movement. Just this stillness that felt louder than anything. I don't know how long I stood there. At least a few minutes. Then the strangest thing happened. Both doorknobs front and back clicked at the exact same time. Like someone had turned them in unison. That's when I finally lost it. I grabbed my phone, which was still stuck at 1:41 a.m., and ran into the bedroom. I locked the door behind me, turned off the lights, and sat with my back against the wall, clutching the bat in both hands. I stayed like that for hours, just waiting, listening. I never heard any footsteps, no glass breaking, no talking, no cars pulling away, just that suffocating silence. Eventually, I passed out from exhaustion, right there on the floor. I woke up around 7:30 a.m. My phone was back to normal. Time ticking, signal restored, like nothing ever happened. Cautiously, I opened the bedroom door and crept into the kitchen. The back door? Still locked. So was the front. But something was different. On the inside of the front door, just above the handle, was a greasy, smudged handprint. Long fingers, thin palm, way too high to be a kid. I hadn't touched the door. I know that for a fact. And I live alone. I didn't call the police. What was I gonna say? Hi, someone might have gently touched my house last night. They'd laughed me off the line. Instead, I installed a Ring camera that afternoon. I figured if it happened again, at least I'd get proof. Now here's where it gets worse. The camera worked fine for the first couple nights. Nothing unusual. Then on the fourth night, around 2:12 a.m., I got emotion alert while I was at work. I worked the night shift at a warehouse at the time, so I pulled up the live feed on my phone. The feed was dark for a second, then it flickered, and there he was. A man standing directly in front of the camera, not doing anything, just staring. His face was pale, features almost blurred, like my phone couldn't focus on him. But his eyes? He was looking straight into the lens, almost like he knew I was watching. I screenshotted it and called my coworker over. I asked him if he could make out the face, and he just stared at the screen and said, "Dude, he's smiling." I hadn't even noticed. The smile was subtle, like someone just barely pulling the corners of their mouth. But it was there. I rushed home with a cop on the phone. But when I got there, nothing. No one around, no footprints, no tampering. But my Ring feed? It had 0 saved footage from 2 o'clock to 2:15 a.m. Like that part of the night just ... vanished. I showed the screenshot to a few people. Some said it looked edited. Others thought it was a lighting glitch. But one guy, my cousin Mark, who's into paranormal stuff, looked at it and said, "That's not a real face. That's a mask. Like something pretending to look human." I moved out 2 weeks later. Not because of the knocks, not because of the doorknobs, but because every single night for a week, the Ring camera stopped recording between 1:40 and 2:15 a.m. right around the time the knocks first happened. And every morning, there was a new greasy handprint somewhere else. On the window, on the porch light, once on my bedroom window, on the second floor. I still have the screenshot. I don't show people anymore. Most don't believe me. But every now and then, I still hear 2 knocks at night, no matter where I live. This happened to me when I was 17, but I still think about it more than I want to admit. It was the summer before my senior year. Me, my cousin Jordan, and our 2 friends Ty and Rob planned a weekend camping trip in Shawnee National Forest in southern Illinois. It wasn't too far from home, and we'd gone a couple times with family when we were kids. This time was different, though no adults, no supervision. Just 4 dumb teenagers, a few tents, some beer we snuck from Jordan's older brother, and way too much confidence. We picked a site near a trailhead not far from Garden of the Gods. It's gorgeous during the day. Those sandstone cliffs and forest views go on forever. But once the sun drops, that whole place changes. It gets real quiet and real dark. We got there late afternoon, set up our tents, grilled some hot dogs, and hung around the fire cracking jokes and acting tougher than we were. That first night was nothing special. Cold, sure, but we were too busy goofing around to care. It wasn't until the second night that things got weird. It started with the silence. I know that sounds dumb, but if you've ever camped, you know what I mean. Usually there's some noise, right? Crickets, frogs, wind through the trees. But around 11:30 p.m. that night, the woods just shut up, all at once, like someone hit mute on nature. I was sitting on a log by the fire with Ty, and even he stopped mid-sentence and looked around like, did something just happen? Jordan laughed and said, guess Bigfoot doesn't like noise, and we all kind of chuckled. But I noticed something. Olive, Jordan's dog, this goofy, fearless pit mix, had gone dead still. Ears up, staring into the trees, she let out a low growl, a sound I had never heard her make before. That's when Rob pointed his flashlight toward the edge of the clearing. There was nothing there, but the beam only went so far. Past the first line of trees, it was just blackness. And then we heard a stick snap, not far, maybe 30 feet from us. We stood there for a minute, waiting for an animal to dart out or something, but nothing moved. Nothing ran. Nothing made another sound. Jordan called out, "Yo, who's there?" Of course, no answer. Then came the second sound, a dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled slowly across leaves and dirt. It was subtle, but rhythmic. It stopped. I don't know what it was, instinct maybe, but I felt something cold crawl up my spine. We all did. Ty grabbed a piece of firewood like a bat and said, we should go in the tents. Lock it down for the night. So that's what we did. We double-checked our stuff, doused the fire, and zipped ourselves into our tents. Me and Ty in one, Jordan and Rob in the other, about 10 feet away. Olive curled up at our feet, but she stayed restless. Every little twig crack outside made her perk up. I laid there for what felt like hours, just staring at the ceiling of the tent. No wind, no animals, no voices, just silence. Then came the first sound. It was faint, like cloth rustling, or footsteps, but not human ones. They didn't crunch or stomp. It sounded like something light and fast, darting just outside the tent. Ty whispered, "You hear that?" I nodded, didn't say a word. Then Olive let out this short, sharp bark and bolted upright, ears straight up. We sat frozen. From somewhere out in the dark came a new sound. A clicking, almost like bones tapping together. Click, click, dot, 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 click. Then nothing. That should have been the worst of it. But it wasn't. At 3:13 a.m. I remember exactly because I kept checking my phone. I woke up to this awful feeling. Not fear, not anxiety, just roundness, like I wasn't supposed to be awake. Like I wasn't supposed to be there. And then came the breathing. Slow, wet, ragged. Right outside the tent wall. Not moving, not pacing. Just standing still and breathing. Ty was already awake. I could feel him holding his breath. I mouthed, "Do not move." The sound stayed for maybe 20 seconds. Then it started to circle. Still breathing. Once, twice, 3 times. I looked down at Olive. She wasn't growling anymore. She was trembling. And her eyes were locked on the corner of the tent. Then came the worst part. From the darkness came a voice. Not quite human. Not quite right. It whispered, "One of you." We didn't breathe. Didn't move. Then crack. A branch snapped right next to our tent. And silence. We stayed in that position until the sky started to glow with early light. When we finally unzipped the tent and stepped out, we saw footprints in the dirt all around our tent. Barefoot, large, like a man's, but the toes were long and spread unnaturally wide, like hands. But the scariest thing? Jordan and Rob's tent was empty. We found their tent empty. Jordan and Rob gone. The flap wasn't torn or yanked open. It was unzipped, clean and neat, like they'd left willingly. But they never woke us, never called out. And both their shoes were still inside the tent. We stood there in stunned silence. Ty kept whispering, "No, no, no, no." Olive was pacing, sniffing the ground in frantic loops. Her tail low, her nose twitching like she couldn't track what she was smelling. I pulled my phone out, no signal. We were deep enough into the woods that bars were always spotty. But this time, it was like my phone wasn't even trying. Just dead silence across every app. Ty's was the same. That's when we noticed something else. Footprints. Not just the weird barefoot ones from earlier. These were Jordan's. I knew because of the odd heel wear. He always walked on the inside of his shoes and left this uneven print. There were 2 sets of his prints. One leading into the forest and one coming back. But the set that came back? They stopped about 10 feet from the tent. Then nothing. Just those same strange wide-toed barefoot prints, circling, moving. At one point, they passed between the 2 tents. We followed the trail as far as we could, maybe half a mile deep into the trees, until they just stopped, like whoever made them vanished into thin air. No blood, no sign of a struggle. It was like they'd simply disappeared. We finally got a weak signal around 8 a.m. and called the ranger station. They arrived fast, 2 rangers and a sheriff's deputy. We told them everything, even though we knew how insane it sounded. They looked around, took some notes, and asked the same question we did. Why would both of them walk off without shoes? They filed an official report and searched the area for the rest of the day. Drones, dogs, nothing. It wasn't until late that afternoon that they found Rob. He was huddled near the riverbank, about 1.5 miles from camp. Sitting upright, covered in mud, silent, eyes glassy and wide open. He wouldn't speak, not to the rangers, not to his parents, not to us. He just kept whispering one sentence over and over. It wanted one of us. Jordan was never found. They searched for a week. No sign, no remains, no clothes, nothing. Eventually, they closed the case. Official cause, missing person, possible wildlife involvement. We knew better. Because a month later, I got a package. No return address, no postmark. Inside was a single photo printed on glossy paper. It was of our camp, taken from the tree line. You could see our tents, our fire pit, even Jordan, blurry, facing away from the camera. And behind him, A figure? Tall, thin, pale, with arms too long and no visible face. Its hand was reaching toward him, but not touching, just hovering, like it was waiting for permission. I didn't tell the cops. What could I say? I burned the photo, but I can't burn the memory. I won't talk about it. Rob's in therapy. Has been ever since. Sometimes I get texts from him at 2 or 3 a.m. that just say, "It still knows." Then nothing. Olive passed away 2 years later. And me? I haven't slept outside since, because sometimes I still hear that clicking sound. And sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm absolutely sure someone's standing just outside my window.